The first thing I did after being reborn was to break off my engagement with Ethan Lewis. In my previous life, I had spent most of my years exhausting myself for Ethan. But when I was bedridden with illness, he couldn't even wait for me to pass away. Behind my back, he was already planning a grand wedding with Lily White. Their wedding coincided with my funeral. This time, I refused to be so foolish. While Ethan was busy breaking ties with the Lewis family to avoid marrying me, and was running to the White family to serve Lily and her mother, I went straight to the Lewis estate. Emily, marrying into the Lewis family was your grandfather's last wish. It was also a marriage arrangement decided long ago between our families. Mr. Lewis, the family patriarch, said as he pulled out a yellowed marriage contract. I read it over several times, my gaze eventually landing on the man standing behind him. If I have to get married in half a month, then I'll marry him, I said, pointing to Liam Lewis. When I declared that I wanted to marry Liam, the entire room fell silent. Mr. Lewis looked utterly shocked. Emily, marriage isn't a joke. You and Ethan were promised to each other from birth. You grew up together as childhood sweethearts. How can you suddenly refuse to marry him, and instead say you want to marry Liam? He wasn't wrong. Since childhood, I'd known that I would grow up to become Ethan's wife. For years, my greatest wish was to marry him. But he never loved me. In my previous life, Ethan only married me because of the Lewis family's arrangements. On our wedding day, the first words he said to me were, Emily, since you insisted on marrying me, be prepared for me to never love you in this lifetime. At the time, I thought he was just angry. Surely, over time, feelings would grow. I refused to believe that after all these years, he felt nothing for me. Even after our marriage, I hoped his indifference would eventually melt away. But I was wrong. After we married, Lily moved to the South and became an unforgettable regret in his heart. Even when we were in our 60s, Ethan would sit in his study, staring at the love letters he had written to her in his youth, silently weeping. Before I died, he coldly told me, if it weren't for the promise I made to my grandfather, I would have divorced you long ago and married Lily. You ruined us. It was then I realized he didn't just fail to love me. He hated me to the core. He even went so far as to hold a grand wedding with Lily on the day of my funeral. This time, I will never repeat that mistake. Mr. Lewis, I'm not joking, I said firmly. When our families arranged this marriage, they only specified that I was to marry someone from the Lewis family. There was no rule that it had to be Ethan, was there? Liam Lewis was Mr. Lewis's youngest son, born when he was over 50 years old. He was only 5 years older than Ethan. In my previous life, Liam left the Lewis family and moved abroad after Mr. Lewis passed away. I heard he never married. My impression of Liam was vague. He was a quiet and reserved man, always mature beyond his years. Unlike Ethan, he didn't seem to carry the burden of unrequited love or secret infatuations. If I had to marry someone, I might as well choose a man who could treat me with mutual respect. That was far better than a marriage filled with resentment. Mr. Lewis sighed when he saw my determination. You make a valid point, but we still need to hear Liam's thoughts on this. Liam stood tall and composed, his white shirt impeccably pressed without a single crease. When I noticed him furrow his brows, my heart skipped a beat. In my haste to escape Ethan's nightmare, I had completely overlooked whether Liam would accept. But to my surprise, Liam finally spoke. As long as you've thought it through, I have no objections. Hearing this, Mr. Lewis immediately broke into a smile. Great. Then the wedding will proceed as planned in half a month. Everything at the Grand Horizon Hotel is already arranged. I told you I won't marry Emily. Before Mr. Lewis could finish speaking, Ethan burst through the door, anger radiating from him. He shot me a look of utter disdain before turning to his grandfather. Grandpa, this is the modern age. Childhood betrothals are an outdated, feudal tradition. If you don't let me marry Lily, I'll never come back to the Lewis family again. Mr. Lewis slammed the table in anger, his response drowning out the radio playing in the background. How many times do I have to tell you? A woman like Lily, who had a child out of wedlock, has no place in the Lewis family. Do you have any idea how much ridicule my old comrades put me through because of your behavior? You're embarrassing this family. Ethan, utterly blinded by his obsession with Lily, refused to tolerate anyone criticizing her. even if it was his grandfather. I don't care what you say. In this life, I'll only ever marry Lily. If you don't approve, I'll move into the dorms at work and never set foot in the Lewis house again. As Ethan stormed past me, he sneered venomously. You can go ahead and complain to Grandpa all you want. It won't make a difference. I'm never going to marry you. You'd better give up on that idea. It turns out Ethan thought I had come to the Lewis estate to pressure him into marrying me. Little did he know, my greatest wish in this life was to stay as far away from him as possible. Don't go after him, Mr. Lewis called out to the butler, taking a sip of tea to calm his frustration. He's spoiled beyond reason. If he wants to sever ties with this family over a woman, then let him. True to his word, Ethan moved out of the Lewis estate and into his dorm at work. At the school cafeteria, I often saw him with Lily. Some colleagues who were close to me voiced their indignation. Emily, it's bad enough that Mr. Lewis brought Lily into our school as a substitute teacher. Now that they're planning to get married, they're practically inseparable. Anyone who doesn't know better would think she's the one marrying him. I merely smiled faintly and continued eating my lunch, not bothering to respond. What? A colleague asked, leaning in closer. It doesn't matter, I replied softly, shaking my head. I wasn't about to stir up any drama before marrying Liam. As for Ethan and Lily, they no longer had anything to do with me. Since I wasn't marrying Ethan, I had no reason to stay in the new house Mr. Lewis had prepared for us. Out of sympathy, he had allowed me to live there alone because it was close to the school and in a safe neighborhood. Now that things had changed, I decided to move out. But when I returned to pack my belongings, I found them tossed haphazardly into the hallway. Miss Taylor, you're back. I'm so sorry, but Ethan asked me to move in with my daughter. There wasn't enough space, so I had to put your things in the hallway for now. Lily stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, dressed in a floral print dress. Her posture exuded the air of a hostess. You know how crowded these apartment blocks can be. Ethan couldn't bear to see us struggling, so he asked you to move out. I hope you don't mind the inconvenience. In my previous life, Ethan had done the same thing, bringing Lily into our new home and forcing me out. Back then, I had been devastated, heartbroken, and demanded answers from him, screaming and crying about why he would let another woman sleep in our home. His response? A cold, mocking laugh. We're not even married yet. When did you get the right to dictate anything about a Lewis family property? This time, I felt nothing. Without a word, I quietly began gathering my belongings. My silence seemed to unsettle Lily. You're not jealous? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Aren't you afraid Ethan will end up marrying me instead of you? I looked up, my gaze cold as ice. A whore and a dog. A match made in heaven. Lily's face turned red with anger as tears welled up in her eyes. Who are you calling a whore? She screamed. That moment, Ethan appeared. Seeing Lily crying, he immediately jumped to conclusions. Emily, all she asked was for you to move out temporarily. Did you really have to bully her like this? Or is it that you're just after the Lewis family's money and can't stand losing your meal ticket? Ethan's arrogance and self-importance were unbearable. Once he made up his mind, no one could change it. I didn't want to waste another moment entangled with them. Without a word, I turned and walked away. I could still hear Ethan shouting behind me, his voice sharp and relentless. Emily Taylor, a woman like you doesn't stand a chance of marrying me. Don't even dream about it. I'm not going to the wedding in half a month. You can count on being humiliated. After moving back to the employee dormitory, I avoided any interaction with Ethan and Lily. Still, rumors about the two of them flooded the school. Every time I passed by, I could feel the pitying stares from my colleagues. A week later, the principal summoned me to his office, looking grave as he gestured to a letter on his desk. Miss Taylor, someone has filed a report accusing you of plagiarism during the teacher's writing competition. This is a serious matter, and the higher-ups are paying close attention. The accusation came out of nowhere, and I felt completely blindsided. Principal, every single word in that article was my own. How could it possibly be plagiarism? And who exactly did I plagiarize? The principal sighed, clearly frustrated. The accuser provided drafts and outlines as evidence. Even if I wanted to suppress this, I can't. I think it's best if you take a few days off while this is being addressed. The words hit me like a thunderclap. Numbly, I stumbled out of the office, only to see Lily standing nearby, a smug smile curling her lips. In that instant, everything clicked. Most of my belongings had been left in the new house. Other than Lily, there was no one else who could have taken my drafts to accuse me of plagiarism. It was you, I said, glaring at her. Lily didn't even try to deny it. Seeing that no one was around, she smirked. Yes, it was me. So what? It's your fault for leaving your things lying around. My hands trembled with anger, but Lily only looked more pleased with herself. Emily, you took my man, so don't blame me for taking your job. If you don't leave, how am I supposed to get promoted from a substitute to a full-time teacher? So that's what this was all about. As I was about to argue further, the principal called her into his office, leaving me no choice but to file an appeal. However, when I brought the matter to the higher-ups, they told me, we already have proof that your work plagiarized an original submission. All you can do now is wait for the decision. The decision came quickly. I was fired. The principal told me that if it weren't for my prior contributions to the school, they would have made an example of me in a public disciplinary meeting. How laughable. The real author was expelled, while the plagiarist basked in success and received a promotion. That same evening, Ethan held a celebratory dinner for Lily's promotion. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. When I arrived, I picked up a glass of wine and poured its contents directly onto Lily's head. Gasps filled the room, and Ethan grabbed me, dragging me out of the restaurant. Emily Taylor, are you insane? It's just a teaching position. Lily is a single mother. Do you know how hard her life is? Can't you just let her have it? If you still want to marry me, stop making things difficult for her. So Ethan knew all along that I was the one who had been plagiarized. In fact, it was likely that he was the one who helped Lily fabricate the evidence. Without thinking, I slapped him hard across the face. Ethan Lewis, you make me sick. Don't worry, I wouldn't marry you in 1,000 lifetimes. Ethan, however, dismissed my words as mere spite. In his mind, he was so certain of my devotion that he believed I could never truly let him go. I thought he'd never admit fault, let alone apologize. But 3 days later, Ethan did something I never expected. He came to me to make amends. Emily, Lily just wanted to stay at the school so badly that she acted impulsively and took your drafts. I'm here to apologize on her behalf. After being fired, I returned to my old apartment in the crowded tenement block. When Ethan came to see me, he looked uneasy standing in the bustling courtyard. Lily's been reported for getting her position at the school through backdoor connections. I admitted to pulling some strings, but Lily has the ability to hold her position, doesn't she? Ethan argued. Her ability? I scoffed coldly. You mean the ability to accept bribes from parents or turn a blind eye to the children of wealthy families? I stayed silent after that, simply staring at Ethan. If you come forward and confirm that Lily wrote that article and that you plagiarized it, she'll be able to stay, he pleaded. It was the first time Ethan ever apologized to me, but it was for another woman. Worse, he had the audacity to make such a shameless request. Get out, I said, turning my face away, unwilling to waste another word on him. The day after tomorrow was my wedding with Liam, and there was still so much to prepare. I had no time for this nonsense. Ethan, however, seemed wounded, as though his pride had been cut. It must have been you who reported her, right? He accused. Emily Taylor, you're such a despicable woman. Let me tell you, if you help her this one time, I'll agree to marry you. You'd better think carefully about this. To Ethan, marrying me was apparently some kind of charity. Unfortunately for him, I didn't care. The next day, a close colleague insisted on taking me out for a meal. You know how foreigners love their bachelorette parties. Let's give you one too, she said playfully. Unable to turn her down, I went with her to a restaurant. While heading to the restroom, I overheard a familiar voice coming from the private room next door. It was Ethan's. If it weren't for Lily, I'd never agreed to marry that woman. Just looking at her makes me sick, he said. Peeking through the slightly open door, I saw Ethan with his arm wrapped around Lily, speaking with a sickening devotion. Don't worry, I'll never love anyone but you. Marrying her tomorrow is just to placate my grandfather, and keep you in the school." Lily blushed and leaned shyly into his chest while their friends teased them. Emboldened by a few glasses of low-alcohol wine, Ethan seemed completely shameless. For a moment, I felt a sharp sting of betrayal. I thought I was numb to Ethan's behavior, but hearing him belittle me so casually in front of another woman still hurt. So this was Ethan in his 20s. Arrogant, foolish, and utterly laughable. How had I spent decades married to this man? A bitter smile crept onto my lips as I whispered to myself, "Ethan, your presence at tomorrow's wedding won't be needed." The next day, my wedding to Liam proceeded as planned. Guests initially seemed startled when they realized the groom wasn't Ethan, but the prestige of the Lewis family kept them from commenting. Instead, they offered polite smiles and words of congratulations. As Liam and I made the rounds to toast the guests, Ethan arrived late, accompanied by Lily in a long red dress. It was exactly like my past life. Back then, Ethan had intentionally disappeared on our wedding day, turning me into a public joke. If not for Mr. Lewis stepping in to maintain order, I might have broken down entirely. Not only that, but Ethan had brought Lily to the ceremony dressed in an outfit similar to mine, standing boldly by his side for all to see. It was a blatant humiliation that I had swallowed in silence in my previous life. But this time was different. Ethan's expression turned to shock when he saw Liam standing beside me, dressed as the groom. "Uncle Liam, why are you wearing a groom's suit?" Liam raised an eyebrow and replied calmly, "Because I'm the groom. What did you expect me to wear? But look at yourself. Reek of alcohol and still in yesterday's clothes. What kind of impression are you trying to make?" Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief, his expression frozen. "What's going on? Isn't today my wedding day?" Ethan demanded, his voice trembling with disbelief. Mr. Lewis chuckled coldly, slamming his cane against the floor with a resounding thud. "You didn't want to get married, didn't you? Well, now you've gotten your wish. What are you complaining about?" Ethan shook his head in frustration, then turned sharply toward me. "Emily Taylor, did you say something to Grandpa and Uncle Liam? Or did you pull some kind of trick? I knew you couldn't be trusted." Before I could respond, Liam stepped forward, placing himself protectively in front of me. His voice carried an unyielding authority. "Emily Taylor is not someone you can address so casually. Based on seniority, you should be calling her aunt." Ethan stumbled back in shock, nearly knocking Lily off balance. "Ethan, this is wonderful," Lily exclaimed, her face alight with hope. "If your grandfather isn't forcing you to marry Emily, then we can finally get married." Her words practically screamed her ambition to marry into the Lewis family. But before she could finish, Mr. Lewis snorted derisively. "Not just anyone can marry into the Lewis family. Ethan, if you want to bring in a woman like her, it'll only happen over my dead body." Lily's face crumpled as tears began streaming down her cheeks. She bit her lip, clearly unable to accept the humiliation. "Ethan, you promised to marry me. How can you let your family insult me like this?" Ethan hesitated, caught between Lily's pleas and his grandfather's unyielding stance. The surrounding guests began whispering, pointing at Lily. "Isn't she that girl from the White family? Didn't she run off with some man years ago and come back pregnant? I heard her parents were so furious they passed away. And now she wants to marry into the Lewis family? Doesn't she know her place?" Lily's face flushed an angry red. Stamping her foot, she turned and ran out, covering her face with her hands. Only then did Ethan seem to snap out of his daze. He turned to Mr. Lewis, demanding, "Why didn't anyone tell me the groom had changed? Why wasn't I informed?" Mr. Lewis glared at him, his tone icy. "I called your school multiple times, but you refused to answer, thinking I was forcing you to come back and marry. I even sent letters, but you returned every single one." Ethan's face turned ghostly pale. Ethan stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. In the end, he chose to chase after Lily. Fortunately, the unpleasant disruption didn't affect the overall flow of the wedding. That evening, I sat on the bed draped in bright red sheets, my face burning as I finally voiced a question that had been bothering me. "Was it you who reported Lily to the higher-ups?" There was no one else who could have intervened so decisively. Only Liam had the power and connections to ensure Lily was removed from the school. Liam nodded quietly, his expression calm as ever. "You married me. I won't let you be wronged again. I've also spoken to the school. If you want, you can return to teaching whenever you're ready. His words warmed my heart. But this time, I hesitated. It wasn't because I'd have to face Ethan at school. In my previous life, I'd worked there until retirement, only to realize I didn't truly love teaching. I'd like to try applying to a newspaper instead, I confessed, voicing the thought that had been on my mind. I worried Liam, like many men, might disapprove of his wife working outside after marriage. But to my surprise, Liam simply said, "Do whatever you like. If that's what makes you happy, go for it. If it doesn't work out, I'm here for you." Encouraged by his support, I carefully slipped my prepared manuscript into a narrow slot on the mailbox. If the submission was accepted, it would give me an edge in the newspaper's interview process. As I walked past the department store, I suddenly remembered that Liam seemed to own nothing but white shirts, so I decided to pick out some fabric for him. To my dismay, I ran into Ethan and Lily at the fabric shop. Lily was clinging to Ethan's arm, pointing at the fabric I had just chosen. "This one. Wrap it up for me," she told the shop assistant. My mood instantly soured. Even the fabric I had admired moments ago now seemed dull and unappealing. I quietly slipped the fabric coupon back into my pocket, then turned to the shop assistant with a polite smile. "Give it to her. Some people just enjoy taking what others don't want." Lily bristled like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Don't act so high and mighty just because you can't have him. You didn't seem so dignified when you were chasing after Ethan like a lovesick puppy." I glanced at Ethan, looking him up and down with a faint smirk. Charming, isn't he? Ethan, who had remained silent until now, suddenly looked grim. "Emily Taylor, don't think you're so special just because you married my uncle. You only managed that because of that old marriage contract. Lily's different. She loves me for who I am and doesn't care about my family's wealth." Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a flicker of awkwardness on Lily's face, but she quickly masked it. She leaned sweetly on Ethan's shoulder, as if the world revolved around him. "You know, we should thank you, Emily. Without you, Ethan and I wouldn't have been able to end up together. We're family now. When the baby arrives, don't forget to come to the celebration." Lily gently placed a hand on her stomach, her expression glowing with mock maternal affection. She was trying to provoke me, but her intentions were transparent. It was clear she was hoping to use the baby to secure her place in the Lewis family. I couldn't help but sneer. And here I thought dogs might change their ways. Is having a child out of wedlock supposed to be something to brag about? A few years ago, both of you would have been thrown into jail for this. With that, I walked past them without another word. True to form, it wasn't long before Ethan started pestering Mr. Lewis to let him marry Lily. "I've already told you, as long as I'm alive, that woman will never set foot in my house," Mr. Lewis roared, his anger making him short of breath. Ethan, however, was as stubborn as ever. "Grandpa, it's the modern age. People believe in free love now. Besides, Lily is carrying my child. That baby is a member of the Lewis family." Instead of softening, Mr. Lewis grew even angrier. "A child conceived out of wedlock? That's nothing but a bastard. How did our family raise someone as shameless as you?" His fury boiled over, and he struck Ethan's leg with his cane. "If you're so determined to marry her, then get out of my house and don't ever come back." Ethan was kicked out of the Lewis estate, and he ended up holding a small wedding with Lily in the house that was once supposed to be ours. The only attendees were his drinking buddies. Ethan had always basked in the respect others showed him as a Lewis, but now that he had severed ties with the family, people stopped treating him with the same regard. Even Lily soon began complaining incessantly. "How can you call yourself a man when your teacher's salary can't even buy a decent length of fabric?" Her nagging grew worse as time went on. It didn't take long before Ethan came crawling back to Mr. Lewis, begging for forgiveness. But Mr. Lewis was a man of his word. He sent his reply through a guard. "You can come back with the child, but that woman will never step through these doors." Ethan was left standing outside the estate, not allowed even a single step inside. Meanwhile, I received notice from the newspaper. I had been hired and would start work next month. Life finally seemed to be looking up. Without Ethan in my life, the world felt brighter and freer. One day after work, as I walked home, I overheard some colleagues gossiping nearby. "Have you heard? That grandson from the Lewis family got cheated on. Yeah, I heard too. The guy involved was the principal from the school next door. Caught in bed. No less. And they say when the wife caught them, Lily and the principal didn't even have clothes on. Hearing that, I couldn't suppress a smirk. It seemed karma had finally caught up with Lily and Ethan. Such a scandal. In an era with limited entertainment. Spread like wildfire. The principal's wife, a fiery woman, caught them in bed together and sat on the floor wailing loudly, ensuring every neighbor nearby heard every detail. Lily's affair with the principal was clearly an attempt to return to her teaching job. After all, Ethan's salary could barely support her and her daughter, let alone provide for the baby she was carrying. This wasn't a minor issue. The principal's wife called her family, who dragged both Lily and the principal to the police station. The principal, accused of inappropriate relationships, was fired from the school. Lily, being pregnant and unemployed, was let off with a warning after a brief scolding. But the principal's wife wasn't done. She took her revenge to Ethan's doorstep, throwing buckets of waste at his house and employing every disgusting tactic she could think of to humiliate them. Ethan, already embarrassed by Lily's actions, couldn't take it anymore. He finally knelt before Mr. Lewis, his pride shattered. "Grandpa, I was wrong," Ethan admitted, bowing his head in a rare display of submission. Though still angry, Mr. Lewis couldn't bear to completely abandon his grandson. Ethan was allowed back into the family, but the entire ordeal made any interaction with him deeply uncomfortable for me. "Emily, I was wrong about everything. I didn't realize Lily was that kind of woman," Ethan said awkwardly, his voice filled with regret. In my memory, Ethan had always been proud and self-assured, even as he aged. But now, he seemed 10 years older, his back hunched under the weight of the rumors and humiliation. "It's all in the past," I said lightly, my tone devoid of emotion. Once, I might have hated Ethan, but now, as I stood by Liam's side, doing work I loved and watching Ethan reap what he had sown, I realized I didn't care enough to hate him anymore. You only hate the things you care about. Indifference had replaced that anger. "Emily," Ethan hesitated before continuing, "I know there's no real affection between you and my uncle. The mistakes I made in the past, let's fix them. You and I, we were childhood sweethearts. If you're willing to divorce him, I can." "Stop." I cut him off sharply. "Do you think I'm some object you can summon or discard at will? How pathetic that only after being abandoned and humiliated, you finally thought of me." I looked him directly in the eye, my tone firm and unwavering. "Ethan, I'm happy now. Who says I don't have feelings for Liam? He's 1,000 times. No. 10,000 times better than you. And don't forget your place. Next time we meet, address me as Aunt." With that, I turned and walked away, not sparing him a single glance. It was time to discuss moving out with Liam. Living under the same roof as my ex-fiancé wasn't exactly ideal, and I didn't want to become the subject of gossip. As I rounded the corner, a pair of strong arms suddenly pulled me into a warm embrace. It was Liam. "We'll move out," he said firmly. I wasn't sure how long he'd been listening, but his tone was resolute. I looked up at him, teasing, "Are you jealous?" Liam didn't reply, but I caught sight of the faint redness on his ears. The move went smoothly. Mr. Lewis, ever understanding, had no objections when Liam informed him of our decision. But just as we were finalizing the move, an unwelcome visitor showed up at the Lewis estate. "Ethan Lewis, get out here." Lily's voice rang out, shrill and piercing. Her stomach was noticeably round now, her floral dress strained against her growing figure, looking ill-fitted on her swollen frame. "You're responsible for my pregnancy," Lily shouted, her tone both accusatory and desperate. "You left me out here, alone and pregnant. Have you no shame? If you don't come out, I'll report you for harassment. I'll barge in if I have to. Let's see who dares to stop me with my pregnant belly." At the Lewis estate gates, the security guards exchanged troubled glances but firmly held their ground, barring Lily from entering. Just as Lily was about to launch into another tirade, Ethan finally appeared. "You dare show your face here?" Ethan snarled, his face flushing with anger. "You've been out disgracing yourself, and now you have the nerve to come to my family's home." Ethan's face was a deep red, his rage barely contained. If it weren't for the guards holding him back, he might have done something rash. Disgrace myself? Everything I've done was for our family. Lily shot back, her voice shrill. Do you think I'd have stayed with you if you weren't part of the Lewis family? You're nothing but trash. Cast out by your own kin. If I can't go back to teaching, how are we supposed to survive on your measly salary? Should we starve? Ethan seemed stunned, as if he was seeing Lily's true colors for the first time. He opened his mouth but couldn't form a response. I stood off to the side, watching the chaos for a moment, but quickly lost interest. Their back and forth was pathetic, and I had more important things to do, like finishing the move. Just as I turned to leave, Lily darted toward me, grabbing my arm tightly. Emily Taylor, this is your doing, isn't it? You're the reason Mr. Lewis won't let me into the family. Her grip was firm, and I couldn't immediately shake her off. I glanced around, searching for Liam, but he was nowhere in sight. Panic crept in. What are you talking about? Let go, I demanded, but Lily ignored me, her voice growing more venomous. Seeing me like this must make you so happy, doesn't it? Just because you married Liam doesn't mean you're any better than me. At the end of the day, we're both women who rely on men to climb up in the world. If I'm miserable, don't think you'll have it easy either. With a hateful glare, Lily shoved me hard. Whether it was intentional or not, I stumbled and hit my head against a stone. Darkness consumed my vision. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Liam's guilt-ridden face. His normally smooth chin was covered in stubble, and the fatigue in his eyes made it clear he hadn't rested in a long time. Emily, you're awake. I'm so sorry. I didn't protect you like I should have. I swear I'll never let anything happen to you again. Are you in pain? Does your head still hurt? It was the first time I'd heard Liam say so much at once. I couldn't help but smile slightly, shaking my head. As I tried to sit up, Liam jumped up from his chair, fumbling to adjust my pillow. Hand me water, and tuck the blanket around me. Watching him flustered like that, I couldn't resist teasing him. I just fell. It's no big deal. At worst, I'll have a scar on my head. But Liam's face flushed red, and he hesitated before finally stammering. You're about to become a mom. You need to take care of yourself. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. My heart raced as I stared at him, searching for confirmation. What did you just say? Are you serious? We're having a baby. Liam nodded, over and over, his expression gentle but filled with joy. The realization washed over me. I was pregnant. For the first time in 2 lifetimes. I was going to be a mother. Happiness surged through me, almost surreal in its intensity. That bliss was interrupted by a knock at the door. Uncle Liam, I need to talk to her. Ethan's voice called out from outside. Liam looked at me, silently asking for permission. I gave him a reassuring nod, and he reluctantly left the room. Before he closed the door, I noticed the edge of Ethan's coat peeking around the corner. Emily, I'm sorry, Ethan said as he stepped in, his voice heavy with guilt. I never imagined she would hurt you like that. I stayed silent, watching him with an unreadable expression as he continued. I know I've done so many things to hurt you in the past. These past few days, I've been reflecting on everything that happened between us and finally realized your worth. But now, it's too late. The words Ethan spoke barely registered with me. I had already said everything I needed to during our last conversation. He should know by now that once I make a decision, I don't change my mind, especially now that I'm carrying Liam's child. So his visit clearly wasn't just about an apology. Seeing that I remained silent, Ethan finally revealed the true reason for his visit. I know you won't forgive me, but I'm begging you. Please help Lily. Grandpa is furious, and her life is going to be miserable from now on. But she's pregnant with my child. That baby is a Lewis. Please, Emily, I'm asking you to talk to Grandpa on her behalf. His face was etched with pain. His eyes filled with desperation as he pleaded with me. Please, Emily, I swear I'll make it up to you. Looking at him, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity. Ethan wasn't just betrayed. He had been made a complete fool. But my sympathy didn't extend to protecting his so-called innocence. I let out a faint chuckle, which seemed to light a flicker of hope in Ethan's eyes. However, my next words extinguished it completely. Since you're my nephew, I'll give you some advice as an elder. You should get a paternity test. And if that's not possible, maybe you should have your own health checked. I paused, remembering how in my previous life, despite Ethan's lack of affection for me, we still had the closeness of a married couple. Yet, we never had children. Not because of me, but because of him. He was infertile. So when I learned of Lily's pregnancy back then, I knew immediately that Ethan had been thoroughly deceived. In the past, I chose to stay silent, thinking it wasn't my problem. But now that Lily had come after me, I saw no reason to hold back. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief at my words. He stammered, questioning why I would say such a thing. At first, he dismissed it as nonsense. But as he continued to press me for answers, I stayed silent. The more I refused to elaborate, the more shaken he became. Eventually, he lost all composure and ran out like a madman. The next time I heard Ethan's name, it was in the newspaper. He had killed Lily. In the very house that was once meant for our marriage, he had lit a brazier and died alongside her. By the time anyone discovered them, they were already gone. Ethan likely wouldn't have resorted to such an extreme measure. But when he confronted Lily, she shouted about his infertility for the entire neighborhood to hear. Within days, the scandal spread across most of the city. Ethan, unable to endure the humiliation, took both their lives. Mr. Lewis, having to bury his grandson, aged visibly from the grief. Liam and I had wanted to bring him to live with us so we could take care of him, but he refused, saying it was enough for us to visit him when we could. And then, my young granddaughter tilted her head, her pigtails bouncing against her shoulders, looking absolutely adorable. Before I could finish the story, a voice called out from the kitchen, "Stop telling stories and come eat. I made your favorite, sweet and sour fish." I smiled, brushing a hand gently against my granddaughter's cheek. "And then Grandpa called us to dinner," I said, taking her tiny hand in mine as we walked toward the living room. There, I saw Liam holding a platter of sweet and sour fish, smiling warmly at me.